Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to do another hunt breakdown. Got a lot of good feedback, some good questions from the 160-inch deer we did in Velvet up in Alberta, that last hunt breakdown. This is a super unique piece of property that I really want to get into, so I might ramble a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and apologize for that, but I really want to dive into it and break it down, because this is a property that most anybody can afford. It's a small piece of property in Illinois. As I think everybody knows by now, I live in South Carolina, so I do travel a good bit out of state: Illinois, Kansas, obviously Alberta, Kentucky. We've been as far as Montana chasing the whitetail. Illinois is a great state. You're just about guaranteed a tag there every year. So this was a 29-acre tract. My buddies that known for a while or have seen some of the TV stuff in the past have probably heard of the infamous 29. And what it was a 29-acre tract. It was a big CRP thicket kind of in a neighborhood that led out into a big ag area. And I guess the first thing to talk about is, how did I end up here? So that's an important thing, because guys are going, okay, how can I get a property like this, something similar? The way I ended up here was through relationships. I met a guy through business that lived near here in Illinois, and he invited me out to hunt public land. Actually, I shot a big doe. It was a place on public land where you had to shoot a doe to earn your buck tag, and I never did get a buck on that trip, but I met another guy. I'm not going to use either name right now out of respect for them. If they want to comment on this video and say who they are, and you can reach out to them, absolutely fine by me, but out of respect for them, I'm not going to mention their names. But anyway, I met another guy on this trip, and he and I became really good friends. And to the point that our families became friends, and he would come to South Carolina with his family during the summers, and then I would go out there in the fall and I would hunt with him, during the rut or pre-rut. And we became really good buddies. It was a genuine friendship. And he had access to this little 29-acre tract from an older gentleman that was a friend of his that he would have breakfast with and stuff in the mornings. And as our relationship grew, he asked me if I'd be interested in taking over this little tract that he hadn't hunted in there yet, but he had access to it. So I said, sure, let's go take a look at it. And we actually walked into this piece, and you never know what you're getting into, but you got to turn over every stone. And there's a walking path right up here, and we actually walked in and walked down this walking path to where all this CRP is, and there were literally rubs all throughout this. And we got down here to a fence road to the property line, and there were a couple big scrapes right here. Walked over to here, there was a huge scrape right here, and I said, I'm in. This is perfect. So that's how I ended up there, and it was very inexpensive, less than most people's normal truck payment or car payment, 1 month payment. So it was an inexpensive lease. 29 acres, small tract. And so what the next question, that how did I get it, and what makes this good? Well, what makes it good is these deer are accustomed to humans. They, in these neighborhoods, these walking paths, they interact daily with people. So they're used to human scent. They don't get hunted though. Nobody hunts them in here. So they expect to smell people on these walking paths, up in these neighborhoods. They expect to do all that. So that gives you an advantage. If you've got 1,000 acres in the middle of nowhere and a deer comes across your scent and it's never been there before, it freaks them out. But when they walk up through here, they're expecting to smell people. So that made it really, really good. And the fact that this was a big CRP thicket that nobody ever went into, and then there was some honeysuckle and some privet and stuff that was real thick that these big deer could bed in, and nobody ever bothered them. Another thing, predators, coyotes. We never saw any sign of coyote in there whatsoever. So there was quite a few does that would come in here and bed up in town. I'm sure they were eating the shrubbery and stuff. And they would naturally funnel out to the big ag and then come back in here to bed. So it really, that's why it sets up so good, is because It's a natural bedding area, free of predators. The pockets that they actually bed in, there's no human interference, and then they're also used to having humans around here. So it's a golden piece of property. Now the next thing, so we've talked about how we got there, we talked about what makes it so good, and then the next thing is, all right, how are you going to hunt it? So the way we hunted it, we took advantage of this walking path. We would park up here, we'd walk in this walking path, and all this was honeysuckle, and you couldn't shoot into the CRP. There were no trees in here. There was one scraggly tree over here that just wasn't ideal. It could have worked for a south wind, and I think over the years we may have hunted it once or twice. But the ideal tree was right here in this corner for a north wind or northeast wind, because there was almost a ridge back here that deer couldn't get up and down. And so if you had a northeast wind, it was absolutely perfect, but you could get by with a north wind too. The only downside here is that you did have to cut across right here, which is kind of the property line and fence line, and they could smell you when they came out, and it was unusual to have human scent right here. But again, they let a little more go. But the property was delicate. If you walked back and forth in here a bunch, eventually those bigger deer are smart enough to get out of there, and you're going to have a problem. So we hunted it only during the perfect times, because we got one tree on 29 acres, and the only times we would hunt this, we had a trail camera right here, because there's a great deer trail through here. There's a fence crossing right there, and then there's also a big scrape back here, like I mentioned earlier, and we had a trail camera on that. And we would put those in there early. We put them in there in August and September and just leave them there. And then if we got a rainy day or something, when we got into October and the season started, sneak in, and my buddy would actually check them for me. And as soon as we got daylight pictures towards the end of October, that's when we would hunt it. We would wait for the exact same conditions as the daylight pictures. We'd get a north wind, high pressure, and another thing is we would get the moon right. I'm a big proponent of that overhead and underfoot moon. Adam Hayes owns the Deer Hunter's Moon Guide. He's certainly not paying me to say this, but it's a great product, and you can follow the overhead and underfoot moon. And 3 of the 3 bucks that you're about to see that I killed in here, a 163, a 186, and a 183 back to back to back. They all came with the overhead moon in the afternoons, late October, early November, high pressure, temperatures dropping in the afternoon. It was just a perfect setup, perfect weather. Those are the days we hunted, and we got the deer within either the first afternoon sit or within 3 days of hunting there. The 183 that you'll see, I snort wheezed him. Well, let's start over. Let's start with the first deer that I killed in there, was the 163. That was the first year. We had pictures of him. We called him Big Lefty. And we had daylight pictures of him here. We had daylight pictures of him here. We moved in the very end of October. I actually hunted there in the morning because we had some morning pictures of him. And I saw about 15 does fiddle through here and some smaller bucks. And then I heard a big deer fight up on this ridge, kind of right by this house. But I never saw the bucks. Got back in there the afternoon, and we had a dead north wind, and as you'll see on the video, he comes slipping down from this hardwood ridge to get a drink out of this creek, and I shoot him right there 20 yards behind me. Got him, got him, got him. Look at the mass on that right side main beam. Big blade, God, what a buck. He came down that hill to get a drink of water and was up on his feet early. I shot him at, I don't know, 4:30, 4:45. The very next year, the 186, the one that a lot of y'all have seen on social media, it's been on several different shows. Same scenario, cameras in there, daylight pictures. This was actually, I think, the 3rd of November, around that time. I don't remember the exact date, a little bit later. And first afternoon in, he's back here bedded. I actually see him stand up, self-filming. He's walking through here, snort wheezed at him. He comes all the way across the CRP. It's one of the prettiest footages of all time of a big buck sneaking through the CRP. Comes in, and I wasn't able to turn the camera quite far enough, but I shoot him, get the camera right back on him, and he runs out here and dies. Got him. Killed him. I got him. Got him. Golly. Man. I don't know what to say. This is something else. I mean, 2 years in a row, 2 giant bucks. The following year, again, the exact same thing. I think this was day 2 or day 3, the big 183, the chub buck. We had pictures of him and hunted in the afternoon. He's out here with another decent buck, about a 150 buck, and it's a good buck, and another little teeny guy. Snort wheezed at him right at dark. He comes all the way over, jumps the fence, and I shoot him right there 10, 12 yards.
Got him.
You know, we say it all the time, rather have the right 5 acres than the wrong 5,000. And I think this place right here, little 29-acre tract in the right spot proves that. I mean, it's an incredible place. And every year, if a big one gets in here, you can kill him.
So all 3 deer were killed within 15 yards of each other. And that's just a prime example of when you kill a big deer, there's a reason why. You know, let's take the rut out of it, because all of these were before the rut. There was a reason that you killed that deer outside of the rut. In the rut, anything can happen. If you kill a big one outside the rut, whether it be early season, pre-rut, late season, there's a reason why. He liked that. He feels safe doing whatever it was he was doing. And if he's 4.5, 5.5 years old, another 4.5, 5.5-year-old buck or older is also going to feel that same thing. It doesn't happen every single time, but it's something to file away and to keep in your bag of tricks. This is a prime example. 3 years in a row, 3 big deer. Unfortunately, the owner of this property passed away. I don't have access to it anymore. The kids wanted to do something else with it. But, you know, just to kind of recap, the location, the setup, the whole thing was perfect. And this is not the only property in the world like that. There are more of them. I've actually got one kind of similar here in South Carolina that gets a lot of human involvement. And it feeds out to an ag belt, but it's not, obviously the deer aren't as big, but there is a decent buck in there for South Carolina that I might go after this year. So be looking for those out of the way places that are inexpensive. Most guys can afford them. If you have to lease them, heck, I probably could have gotten permission to hunt in here if we had tried, and not had to pay the little lease fee. So that's kind of the hunt breakdown on the 29. I hope this information is valuable for you. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the channel. We appreciate all your feedback, any questions, ideas. One guy wanted to know what kind of stands we were using. We had a lone wolf set in here, and we actually had one of the long extended climbing stick ladders or whatever they are. It's a great big tree, so we had to use ratchet straps. We couldn't use the traditional sticks until you got up high. And we also had it really high. This stand was probably 30 feet up because we were nervous about the thermals coming off this ridge, but that really never hurt us because we struck quick. We got in there when the conditions were perfect, and we killed the deer, you know, the first encounter. So that's kind of the breakdown of the 29. Again, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. Any questions, let us know.